Test, test. Seems like it's picking up. Hmm. So this is not full volume, but it's about maybe 3/4 of the way there. That can be heard. Cool. That's all I really need. Um, I don't think I really need any more preparation. I mean, my entire outline I made in about 25, 30 minutes, so how much preparation do I really need? But I will, I suppose, give it another 2 or 3 minutes if anyone else wants to jump in. Actually, it sounds like I can hear myself too, so I'm trying to figure out where that's coming from. Might be my imagination. Oh, never mind. It is because I had the YouTube channel up. This is speaking now. It was working when it came to the YouTube channel that was up and that going in my face. Oh, okay, yeah. Audio's good, I suppose. Okay, yeah. If I'm talking, it's very quiet. How about this? This is not me muting myself in any way. And hedonism, it is. It's just about starting, I suppose. I'm gonna presume this is good enough. So, let's switch to something a bit better, why not? From a goofy gift to something that is actually pwn or mare. Or just, something. There we go. Sleepy mare. Perfect for this. So, this is Horsewords, and you. Who are you? I don't know. I don't really care. What's important are the horse words, not necessarily you. You don't matter. The horse words do, though. The focus on this one is characters. Now, the first time I had the panel here, which was I think last Marecon, it was a disorganized, maybe 40% sober mess. This time, it is going to be an organized 100% sober mess. To anyone who went to Mare Fair last year and had the unfortunate luck to actually be part of it, or at least part of the panel, you would know that it was rather loud, noisy, still more or less disorganized, but I think there was some decent headway there when it came to the philosophy and psychology behind an individual character. Now, those sound like fancy terms, and to be fair, they are. I went to community college, so, big brain here. The focus on that was being able to understand a character, because if you can understand a single person, then you can easily just go, you know what, I think I could write about this person. I can understand what drives them, what chases them, and everything in between that focuses on just how their life is going. Not necessarily them making choices, but just how they react to choices being made for them, since that's what most plot lines are anyway, much like life. It's less about what you want to do in life and more about what others make you do. Fun stuff. So, something to reiterate, something that I brought up at Mare Fair 2. This is a writing panel where there is no writing. Writing's not included, which sounds retarded. Congrats, I'm a retarded man. The focus on this not having any writing, despite it being a writing panel, is because the mechanical parts, the mechanical way you write, whatever perspective, for those who don't know or care, I tend to write greens rather than the usual prose. I enjoy it. There are a lot of ways that I can work with it, make it effective. With it being second person perspective, with limited other perspectives thrown in, it's something where you can tell a certain type of story and evoke certain feelings that much easier. Not to mention it cuts away the 80% of the fat that people have when it comes to looking through a thesaurus and making sure they sound really smart. Because if you can sound really smart, wow, you must be a smart man. No wonder you're writing a story. You're so smart. Compared to, sticking to stuff that works. That said, I'm not making fun of anyone because, to be honest, I haven't read that many stories to begin with, so. Another reason why the writing panel is not about writing. This is all conceptual, and this is all tool-based. For whoever has issues writing, or whoever can write, but they don't really know how to focus on characters, this is to help you out. The mechanical side, what you do, I don't care. It's the nicest way I can put it. I don't care. Your story is going to be written in the way that you write it, and there's nothing any of us can do about it. God help us. So, with this nice, fancy, 30 long minute outline, I guess let's officially get started. So, the focus on this is characters plural. So, what's the difference between a character singular and characters plural? Obviously, you have something to bounce ideas off of. You can talk to yourself about a good 10 hours a day. You're probably not going to shock yourself that much. If you are, you may be schizophrenic. If, however, there are multiple characters, you can say many things, and many other characters will have their different reactions. To anyone who has spoken to a normie before, you understand that 100%. To someone who has spoken about video games in V, you know no one talks about video games there. But sadly, you have to get used to it. That's how life is. Now, in stories, most stories, you're going to have characters plural. You don't need to, but in most, it's just you're going to have other characters. And also, I need to stop looking at chat all that much. I admit I get distracted easy. It's probably why I do such a good job at writing. The focus on multiple characters over singular characters, just again, it's a fact of life. It is, I would not say it's important, but we already have the groundwork of what is important, and that is focusing on a singular character. So, good news is, if you can focus on one character, you can focus on multiple one characters. It's just the interacting that makes it different. When it comes to the strengths and weaknesses of multiple characters versus one character, because let's say that you were at the Mayor Fair panel, you understand the psychology and philosophy of your singular character, and you really like them. You like them so much, you want to focus on just them. You don't want to focus on anyone else. You don't want any possible friends to show up, certainly not any possible enemies, and you more than likely just you want to do everything and see what they're like. Well, you can do that. It might not be a good story. It could be though. Uh, Good example, Castaway. It's what I wrote down in my little WordPad document because I don't use Microsoft Word because I don't have it. Castaway is a very decent movie. I like it. And the vast majority of the movie is just a single dude on an island. That's largely it. I will not say it's necessarily a good character-focused movie because what we learn about, Tom Hanks, his character, like a USPS guy or something like that, all we really learn is him figuring out how to live on a barren island. It's not really that character driven, but it is a good example of most of the movie is just the one guy. Another good example, this time in the vein of multiple characters, Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is very political, very violent, and there are plenty of boobies everywhere. But the main focus that everyone loves and everyone enjoys clipping 10 minutes out of and putting on YouTube are the character interactions. Because you have character A very well defined, character B very well defined. What you see different is that they are different people. And sadly, because they are different people, they have different opinions. Not all the time do they clash. And even if they don't clash, if they gel very well, there may be reasons to say, oh, well, these guys get along so well. Why are they trying to kill each other? Oh, they're different families. Or this is after they try to kill each other. Or right before. There's a lot of killing involved. Interesting stuff. So, with that, if you ever had to ask the most basic question of, oh, hey, why do I even have this character? Well, because they're part of the story. That said, I am in no way advocating for a massive montage of interjecting characters all the time and all that stuff. It's just, it comes to what's natural. I mean, with how many people in the world there are, how many people do you personally know? Even less, how many people do you really care about? Even less, how many people do you interact with on anything resembling a daily basis? Probably not that many. But then again, you're here, so everyone's a nice social giga chad, including me. That's why I'm doing this panel. So, with that out of the way, we understand that characters, plural, is just many characters, singular. This is incredibly elementary and just grade school shit to say. Guess what? I said it, so there's no confusion on the matter. When it comes to characters, plural, interacting, there are many ways. There's familial, where you don't necessarily know this guy or this chick, but they're related. It Newsflash, I'm going to say a lot of shit that sounds extremely elementary. The point is to remind you, or at least bring it up to the forefront. You may know all this stuff already, but there is a chance that maybe you don't really think about it. Well, if you're here for writing, too bad. I'm going to make you think. No one likes thinking. So, you have familial. Now, keep in mind, familial does not necessarily mean amicable. Because many people, I'm sure, have relatives they don't like. But you still have that past with them. I can go more into that later. Then you have friendly. Friendly can mean anything. It can mean, hey, you're a cool guy. Let's go hang out and, I don't know, throw stones at wild cows. I don't know if cows are wild anymore. There's the romantic sort, and obviously we've all had loving, non-abusive relationships before, so I don't even need to go into that. It can be as something as, hey, I don't know you, but you're a cool guy. I'm being a cool guy. I'm pleasantries involved. I'm not really going to dissect one of those two words. I don't pay attention to words. I'm a fucking writer. There's a lot of stuff out there that just says, hey, this is a positive experience. Then you have neutral. Neutral is a variation of friendly that is less friendly. Imagine that. Neutral is just you're talking to people, you're gaining information, your character's asking for directions, asking for, hey, where do I go for this? Think of it as a D&D campaign because it's the most interactive type of storytelling you can do. And it's also extremely bare bones because you can just tell the DM, hey, where's the tavern? Well, you talk to a guy and the tavern says it's over there. Okay, cool. You're not trying to court them, you're not trying to threaten them, you're just basic information exchange. That's neutral. Adversarial. When it comes to characters, plural, interacting in an adversarial manner, it usually means they're more enemies than friends. Going back to the Game of Thrones example, most likely they're trying to kill each other rather than fuck each other. Some cases, one party would like to fuck the other. That is still adversarial because, you know, it's not always wanted. Good news, it's not rape if you're both screaming, so just saying. I put down a few more examples of interactions between characters plural. I think they matter just because it is a different glance. We're looking at the triangle and we're turning it so we have the pyramid, if that makes sense. One is known. Known is, hey, you're my friend. You've been my friend for X amount of years. Well, the good news, we can still be friends, and within that relationship still have friendly, neutral, and adversarial conversations. Because with friends, you're not always buddy-buddy. Likewise, if you're enemies with someone, sometimes, you're beating the shit out of each other. It's been about a half hour, you've argued and bickered and bitched, and after a bit, you know what? Dude, I'm gonna grab a soda. You want a fucking soda? Yeah, sure. Here, don't worry about it. That is a friendly interaction between a known adversary. Likewise, the example before is an adversarial interaction between someone you're friendly with. I blew my own mind here. I'm pretty sure your mind is blank too. I'm not looking at chat, so I'm not going to check on that, but I'm pretty sure people are having aneurysms. Now, while there is known, there is unknown. Going back to the neutral example, you're just talking to someone for an information exchange. Now, again, it's obvious, but here's something that I like to think about. It is presumed. Now, a presumed interaction is more of a sign of a character's trait than anything else. A good example of a presumed interaction is that you just walk up to someone and you effectively fast talk them. You're like, "Oh, hey, buddy, Jesus Christ, I couldn't see you. Listen, can you help me out with this? Can you do this?" You walk up into a conversation. "Oh, hey, yeah, I know this guy. Yeah, he fucks horses." Quite a mad lad, if you ask me. The presumed interaction, as situational as it is, as rarely seen as it may be, is something that it's always fun to see because you see it a lot in mafia movies. You see it a lot when it comes to people who are acting very friendly to someone they don't know and either helping them, setting them up to be a patsy, or outright threatening them. You can argue it doesn't need to be part of the interactions, but I think it's interesting because it's something where it can often be malicious. And when it comes to characters, plural, you don't necessarily need to be a malicious figure to do malicious things. So, Next on the list, actually, I don't know if there were any questions. So every now and again, I'm just gonna look at stuff and see if there's any questions, but I'm not really gonna presume too much on it because again, there's not too many people here, I'm sure. So, all right, no questions. That's always good. I'll admit what helped with Marefair a lot was just the real-time interaction, like anyone raising a hand and going back and forth. That was nice. That was very enjoyable. This is me staring at a screen and talking, so seems a bit more egotistical on my side. So, the most important question I know I don't need to ask. How are friendships made? It's an obvious question, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is this is like a kindergartner question. It's almost insulting to ask. Well, obviously friends are made when you like people and they like you back, right? How else could it be made? Well, that's the question. How else could it be made? Friendships are effectively people who get to know each other, even then, not necessarily at the start, but people who like to help each other out, people who like to spend times together. Uh, Good example would be, say, friends that you made growing up at school, continuing in the vein of all this being elementary baby shit that you obviously already know. A different example would be a coworker. You're always around them, you hear them bitching about stuff, you start bitching about stuff, and next thing you know, you've spent about 3 hours bitching about shit rather than doing invoicing. But I'm sure none of you have ever done that. You're all very productive members of society. Me, on the other hand, I've done that, so I'm gonna fess up to it. I will say at the time, though, I was dangerously sober. Now, a different question. It's the same question, and yet it's different. How are friendships forged? Now, I bring that up a little bit early just to make a clear distinction. To anyone who's ever been in a negative environment or had a series of negative situations, if you've had the luck to have someone join you and to either be at you shoulder to shoulder or to help support you as you support them, I would argue that's more of a friendship forged. Now, there is a difference between the two. Uh, Anyone who's ever been in the military or know people who do, they may know a lot of people where they don't really do a lot of shit together. You know, they get around, they talk. It's like the old timers who talk about the Nam and their time over the Pacific and shooting Asians. As shooting Asians is a hobby enjoyable by everyone, it's something where only they can really relate to it. That is more of a forged friendship compared to someone that you would meet at a Games Workshop store and say, "Oh hey, you like the orcs too? Wah, good sir, wah." Something like that, I think in most stories it might not necessarily matter, because depending on your story, you're either going to have more friendships made than forged. You could argue that a forged friendship is less of an actual friendship than something that's made, but that's for later if I get into just splitting hairs that much. Which brings me to another point, just again going off of the outline, as masterfully crafted as it was. The biggest question I have is, are friends friends? And it's something that's a bit more of a personal question, especially today, because as we all have mountains and mountains of friends, how many of them are strictly online, where most of it's just through text? If you have many friends through text, they're not going to help you bury a body. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I need someone to help me bury a body, but in maybe 60 days I might. Sadly, the people I know online are not going to be around to help, or they don't really know me that well to want to help. So there's the question, are they technically a friend? By the way, that wasn't an ask for help. I can bury a body by myself. Easier to dig tiny holes rather than one big one. When it comes to a story, of course, and getting outside of my presumed manslaughter charges, there is the aspect of when shit gets real, you'll usually see everyone band together. You look at any show out there, any movie, characters who've known each other for maybe 20 minutes, suddenly they're committing crimes together, like, say, burying a body. Or any zombie movie, people who have had maybe 3 minutes of screen time together, they're suddenly cracking jokes and quipping and, doing other shit that bad writers do, which is why they work for Hollywood and get paid a shit ton of money. It's something that I don't really need to bring up that many examples, just because I'm sure many people can think of their own examples. For example, you have a relative you would call a friend. How much of a friend are they? Goes into my next point. There is a difference between a friend and an ally. Let's go back to D&D. You have a party of, let's say, 5 people. Whether or not they're actually friends in real life or not, if you've ever had the joy of having a D&D campaign with people completely unknown to you, you don't really have much of a dynamic. Even inside of the campaign, your characters have a very flimsy, tenuous bond at best. In the fact that, oh hey, we're all hired by the same guy, let's go into this cave and hopefully not die. Or, I don't know you, the city's on fire. Um, if we get jumped, our 2 swords would probably work better than just one. You have situations like that. Now, you have the capacity for a friendship to be forged, or a friendship to be made. That depends on your story, which is why, again, I'd rather just touch on the topic and make you think of it, rather than tell you, hey, this is how you do this, this is how you do that. It doesn't fucking matter what I tell you to do. For one, how I will have 2 characters interact, they're going to be different from your 2 characters. It's like telling me how I can sound even happier and more content with life. What will work for you will not work for me. So, that is a characters, plural, interaction between you and me. That's why Horsewords and you, see? So, there's the next question, and this will probably dip more into philosophical questions as we continue, just because we're looking at the concept of what a friend even is. And the basic question is, what holds a friendship together? It's it's a weird question. It's a question that, again, like everything else, it seems obvious because, well, shit, you had friends growing up, and you may have had the same friends growing up, or you may have made new friends every single year, and they were all different. But many of them came, many of them went. To some of you, the friendships never ended. To others, the friendships never truly began. Hard to say. So, what holds them together? Proximity, that usually helps, doing things together. You know, being a pair of characters, plural, in situations, rather than being a character individual together. There's a difference between that. Kind of like how a group of people in a house that have caught on fire, they don't know each other, they're not really lumped together. Same thing with a movie theater fire. Not everyone is suddenly friends or allies in that situation. Some people make it out, some people get trampled on the floor. Wouldn't call them friends. But I will say, if you can make money trampling people, some people pay good money for that. Small career advice from Blondie. Making memories. The opposite is also worth mentioning. And again, just I want to touch on these rather than focus too much on them. How are friendships tested? Now, having a friendship tested is different from having a friendship that just continues. It's like driving a car down a highway, except now there is a crashed car in front of you, and you have 10 seconds to react. If your friendship just keeps going, much like the car, you will inevitably hit the other car. There is no analogy with the other car, it's another car. Something that you shouldn't be hitting at high speeds. The test is, in this situation, with this analogy, either the brakes, the gas, or the steering wheel. Now, these three tools can be applied in multiple ways, but as far as them being archetypical reactions, let's just stick with the brakes, the gas, and the steering wheel. Now, the brakes is when you just kind of put things on hold and say, hold on now, we have an obstacle. Now, in the terms of friendship, this could be a thing of, hey, listen, man, we're both fucking losers. You still don't have a job. I still don't have a job. Whatever money that we had, it's running out at the end of the month, and rent is due. We gotta think about this. You would possibly have smarter, more conscious friends uh, bring that up and just kind of say, hey, we need to figure this out. Now, the test in that is what answers do you guys come up with? Do you just say, it doesn't fucking matter, let's just worry about it later? Or it might be a thing of, fuck, well, neither of us like having jobs, but we need money. Well, how much do we need? Alright, well, is it worth it to sell anything? Can you just fucking talk to your parents? Can I talk to my parents? Do we know anyone that could generously move in with us, and then we just leech off of them? Fucking A. Our friendship grows, and then someone else foots the bill. That sounds perfect. Now, keep in mind, I'm not focusing on morality, what should be done or what shouldn't be done. What I'm focusing on are these characters, plural, seeing a test and saying, you know what, maybe we can figure this out. Obviously, we're a pair, and if someone else gets hurt in the process, well, it's not our problem. It's us versus them. You know, The Last of Us, but in real life. The other option is the gas. So the opposite of the brake pad is the gas pedal. And after that, you just say, fuck it, it'll figure itself out. Or, I don't know. This apartment sucks anyway. Let's just move back into your parents' place or my parents' place and we'll just goof around like we used to. You can do that too. And then you just crash into it. And, much like a car crashing into another car, if your car is much bigger, if it has a cow catcher, if it has just all these reinforcements, you may stop. Well, no, you may stop, you may slow down, or you may just keep speeding along and then the crashed car, whatever that is, gets further destroyed. That object. Okay, sorry about that. My headset died. Yep. Turns out I was the car that got destroyed. Oopsie. Yeah, that was my headset just dying. So, the crash car is whatever it is going to be. Oh, the fucking toy car. That's good stuff. Alright, so, yeah, it all works. There is no brake pumping on this. We're gonna work with it. So, in this situation, as the pair of friends, plural, people, plural, ponies, plural, whichever they are just gonna say fuck it and do whatever. Now, the third option in this, the steering wheel. Now, the steering wheel is the most boring option because if you have these two friends, plural, in a shitty apartment, hey, apartments due. Neither of us are working. Neither of us have money. Oh well, shit, dude. I'm starting my new place on Monday. First paycheck is like the end of the month, so we'll be fine. That's the steering wheel. Now, much like in real life and much like in driving, the steering wheel is the most mundane, boring, and yet realistic option there is. I'm not saying if there's a wrecked car in front of you, you need to crash into it, but it's incredibly boring to just drive around it because that obstacle is no longer an obstacle. That's someone else's problem. It's not your problem. That's the good stuff. So, we see how they're tested, and we see ways that they concede, or concede, can succeed. You gotta add in that good old suck there. A friendship failing is when they are tested and you don't pull through. That is when you put on the brakes, your situation stops. Alright, well, hold on, let's think of stuff. Then, as the two friends, plural, start thinking of stuff, they say, well, neither of us have jobs, neither of us have money. At the start of the month, rent is due and we don't have shit to offer. A friendship failing is when one friend goes to the other, it's like, dude, why'd you buy the new PS5? It has no games. And then the other friend says, yeah, it has games, it has stuff from the PS4 on it. And then the first friend says, dude, you have a PS4. And then the second friend goes, but not in this resolution. Now, how that friendship may fail is that they realize the TV that friend B has doesn't even support the resolution to begin with, because they're both poor as fuck. That is likely to end a friendship. Another way to end a friendship, say if they decide to go with the route of the gas pedal, they're zooming along, they don't really care. Shocking to the entire world and Jesus himself, the car crashes because you sped up into a crashed car. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm saying you're a very brave man, and you go where I cannot. After that, you have the very obvious. It's the start of the month. Turns out they're co-signed, so both of them are on the hook. And every day is about what? $10 to $50, depending on the apartment complex. Up to 10 days, where suddenly you owe just as much in late fees as you do the rent. And if neither of you have friends, if neither of you have family, then you've successfully screwed each other over. And there's no real way out of that. That's a very obvious way to end a friendship because, well, neither of us cared. I'm going to blame you, you're going to blame me. Much like the failure of putting on the brakes and arguing. It's something where it's like, well, why didn't you do anything about it? Because you didn't. Yeah, because I was waiting for you to do something. Mm. That's a possible way it can fail. Now, keep in mind, I'm just giving you the groundwork and the notice and reminder for things that I'm presuming you already know, because I'm not saying anything smart. It may sound like it, but that's just because of my voice. I can make many things sound incredibly stupid, and yet you think about them. It's a very important task. It's worth mentioning that I forgot my place, but I will continue regardless. Maybe I maybe I shouldn't be sober while doing this. So, the other failure state, as we're continuing, it's bringing me to something to stop me from rambling. You have the example of the steering wheel. Oh, hey, dude, don't worry about it. I got a job at the end of the month. I'll get my first paycheck. Rent will be paid. Now, that will avoid the crisis because, again, you're doing the most sensible, boring thing, which means you're not going to get the sensationalized negativity of, oh, wow, we just had a car wreck. Or we stopped in front of a car and then someone rear-ended us. Maybe these guys are talking about their rent situation in a car. Why do they have a car if they don't have money? I don't know. I don't know many things. That's one of them. Say one of the friends gets a job, and, as their friendship was tested, it ends up failing. Hey dude, can you take care of the rent next month too? Well, why can't you take care of the rent? Well, because it's our apartment. Yeah, but I don't have a job. Get one. Nah. And shockingly, a lot of friendships melt away when money's involved. And then you have to ask, way back at the early part of this, were they friends to begin with, or were they just roommates? That's another question you have to ask yourself if you ever have that sort of story and that situation play out. Not to mention, I'm sure you'll have a nice prologue series of everything, including why these people hooked up in the same apartment together. Are they a couple? Are they relatives, cousins? Just a pair of stoners? Who knows? Those are all very different, unique, entertaining, I'm sure, dynamics. It's up to you to do the heavy lifting, because I don't feel like doing it. So, we see how friends fail, and we're asking repeatedly just what is a friend? And I'm going to stop there, because it's not a question I can answer. I can give you 50 answers to what a friend is, but they're not going to matter, because the example I bring up is not going to be the example you bring up. It's just the way it is. Next part is going to focus on more adversarial relationships. Okay, and again, no questions, just more cars, which is good. It's just, Otto may write about cars, I just talk about them in increasingly unhinged ways. Who's more entertaining? I'll leave that up to you, but I will get a drink first. Sadly, it is just orange strawberry Sunny D, not actual alcohol, as far as I understand it, So far, if there are any questions, any concerns, any confusion, go ahead, let me know. We're only about 40 minutes into this, so we're about halfway through. If this is like a last Marecon, and if no one stops us, we may go over the hour and a half portion. Hard to say. But no one seems to remember that panel anyway, other than them saying that I talk too much. Oh, I hope the mic didn't pick that up. It's a very powerful mic, apparently. So, we focus on friendship. We focus on a lot of friendship. We focus on a lot of types of things that people think is friendship, but it actually isn't. So, this isn't a panel about friendship. This is a panel about characters, plural, interacting with each other. Uh, and now, with everyone having heard me drink, I now have to feel like I have to clear my throat and clear my nose as loud as humanly possible. It's the streaming way. So, as we all know, we're not friends with everyone. As popular and as successful and absolutely pleasant to be around as we are, there are many people that we are just not on good terms with. That could be friends that we don't know anymore. They could be family members and relatives that you would think matter, but in reality they don't. They could be just a dude who fucking parked his car right next to yours when you grab bagels for your department for breakfast. And just, you don't know how he did it, but he parked in such a way that you can't possibly get into your car. So you want to fucking key his shit, you want to rip off his mirror, you want to, slash his tires and all that, but that doesn't solve the issue of you needing to get into your car and going back to enjoy your nice, delicious farmhouse. But, personal issues aside, that's a good example of how you make an enemy. So, I have a small list, and it's more or less the exact same of what we discussed, but in reverse. Going back to the start when it came to the Game of Thrones, there are many characters, plural, and of course, as we know, they like to fight and fuck. If it's the fucking, it's more likely probably friendly, if not transactional. But don't worry, most of it is transactional. The fighting part is interesting because you have friends fight, you have family members fight. Now, this is something that you'll have to do heavy lifting on, of course, but when it comes to adversarial family members, there tends to be history there. There tends to be a very distinct reason why you would be against your own relative. Now, the reasons for that, up to you, but it is something worth remembering that just because you're related by blood doesn't necessarily mean that they're good for you. It's the reason why people say friends are chosen, but you're stuck with family. You know, the whole Married with Children and so many other sitcoms that mention how horrible it is to have family just to have them all conveniently come together by the end of the season. And remind everyone with no family, this is something you'll never have again. It's good stuff. It's good writing. When it comes to a failed friendship, let's go back to our two loser stoners who had no money, had no job, and had no clue what they were going to do. Now, regardless of if they hit the gas pedal, the brake, or the steering wheel, they're no longer friends. Now, what may be interesting is that it might not just be enough that they are no longer friends. There could be some resentment there. There could be something where, you know, one feels entitled to something the second one doesn't believe. That can very quickly lead to hostilities. It's not really part of the outline or anything like that, but it is worth mentioning that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And from both of these examples, both familial and previous friends, you don't necessarily go from loving your friends and loving your family to feeling nothing at all. You usually go in the opposite direction, which is hate. Of like, oh, I hate my family. Mom told me to take out the toast from the toaster again, and I'm the one who put the toast in. Which is weird because you put bread in toast, but she says you put toast in toast. Uh-oh. Suddenly, that familiar relationship, for however short or however long, turns negative. Same thing with friends. Say that, you get the job. Let's go with the steering wheel. You get the job, the friend doesn't. Well, you continue to work, and then your friend, or who used to be your friend, says, dude, we don't even hang out anymore. Well, yeah, it's because I got a job to pay rent. What are you doing? And, sitting around, jerking off, looking at mares. The friend may have not seen that as an issue before, but given he now has to have a job, not wants to, but has to, that becomes an issue. And if it continues, maybe the friend who does have a job kicks out their friend who doesn't have a job. That can very quickly lead to negative consequences for both, for possibly just one. Again, your story, your dynamic, your characters, the weight of their actions is for you to realize. Now, given the situation, given the environment, if it's Equestria, oh no, you're homeless, but Ponyville is such a nice place, it kind of doesn't really matter, because no one's going to let you just be homeless. And even if you do sleep outside, it's not that bad. It's like camping. Just, you know, no game wardens telling you to zip your pants up. If you even have pants. After all, they don't know what pants are. Now, those are the two close aspects. A new one that we haven't really spoken about, outside of maybe the neutral active interaction, are obstacles. Now, let's go with the neutral example that I brought up prior. You go to a town, you're asking a dude, hey, where's the tavern? Dude just says, oh, it's the one single building with the second floor. Jackass. And him calling you jackass, just muttering it, not necessarily meaning anything by it, say he violates your vocal NAP. So you cast a spell with your mouth and set him on fire. That is what we would call a negative interaction. And more likely, it's something that many people are not going to agree with. It doesn't necessarily mean that your character is evil, but you made an enemy by setting him on fire. More so, you very likely made an enemy of all the other people that are associated with him. But as far as you understand it, he's just an obstacle. He was in your way. Even if he wasn't necessarily in your way, if you perceive him as you, character A, perceive character B to be in the way, and if you have the means, you're not going to think about it. Now, you can argue there may be some sort of socioeconomic disparity, or, If you're not a commie, you just say he's a poor bastard. You know what? You're going to have a lot of issues from that, and depending on the character, they might not necessarily care. It's not the type of situation that you would often see, but it's something that can very likely happen. Another good example, a dude works at Wendy's. He gets you your stuff. He forgot to add the fucking ketchup. That jeez, fuck him. You're just gonna go outside and fucking shank him. That is an obstacle-based hostility. Not saying it's right or wrong. After all, ketchup is important, so you know. The next part would be, say, mutual hostilities. Now, mutual hostilities is, say, your standard battle, your engagement. You and your oh so glorious comrades are breaking into a nice undefended cave to usurp the ownership of the cave from these little green goblin fuckers. Or maybe they are just goblins. Or maybe they're green things that fuck goblins. I don't know. That's up for you to decide. Or your character could be a goblin fucker, not necessarily green. So, you know, there's a lot of ways that can happen. But you have both sides where they both understand there is no backing down. There may be a chance for communication, but that's neither here nor there. So, you know, criminals and cops, cowboys versus Indians, the English versus the English, or the English versus the French, or the French versus anyone. It's going to have mutual hostilities on both sides. Now, when it comes to conflict resolution, that is something that will be up to you because you can't always just put down your sword and say, hey, dude, come on. Some people are going to go, well, fuck, you made a good point. Other people are just going to shrug and go, nah, you just disarmed yourself. That's making me easier to kill you. And of course, there are the deeper details that are up to you. Whether or not you want to say, well, to be fair, I'm getting paid a lot. Or, if I don't kill you, someone is going to kill me. Now, that may unlock another character-to-character interaction that is not even connected to the conflict. That nice little spiderweb of detail, you can keep that in your back pocket. Maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. Now, something that's a nice blend, uh, something that honestly, I don't see that often. I see a lot of people try it, but I don't often see it work that well. Rivalry. Now, you have sibling rivalry, you have academic and professional rivals. Rivals are, it's an interesting gray territory to me because it's basically me picking out someone in the crowd and saying, alright, motherfucker, I'm gonna get your ass. I'm gonna beat your fucking ass. Any accomplishment you have, I'm going to exceed that. I will absolutely pee on your towel. More so, it will be a yellow towel so you won't even know. That type of stuff, that type of vitriol, that type of unusual camaraderie is something that it's always fun to see. Because, of course, you have the hostilities. The question is, how much of it is pure hostility, like you genuinely hate this guy, you know? When you were a kid and he was a kid, he peed on your towel. Now it's your entire mission in life to pee in his towel. Not on, but in. Very different terms. Very different. Admiral, to be honest with you. Or, let's say you have a rival, and it's, you know, it's not a life or death situation, but it's the thing of, dude, you. Fuck. That was a really good report you did. Your grade is higher than mine. You know what? Both of us are pretty smart. We're the two smartest dudes in the class. Everyone else is a fucking mouth-breathing retard eating hot Cheetos. I'm gonna fucking take you down. Because, you know what? I want to be the best. And you know what? They want to be the best too. That is not necessarily hostile. There may be some, you know, the competitiveness of it. But it may be a factor of, hey, both of you are working on stuff. Oh, crap. You don't have any of your notes. You don't have any of your shit. And then your rival shows up, and if he's a good competitive sport, he'll say, Hey, dude, you left your book at your desk. Here you go. Oh, Jesus Christ, thank fuck. You saved me. Well, if you have a rival, should they be saving you? I mean, it depends, right? If it's complete hostility, and it's like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna fuck your couch, they're probably not gonna do that. Unless they're more of an honorable sort, which that goes to the psychology or philosophy of the individual character, singular. Now, if it's more friendly, he may just say, "Hey, jackass, you forgot your fucking book. Here you go. I can't be proud of kicking your ass if you're not even trying." Or it might even be a thing of, "Hey, dude, here you go. You forgot." Because, I don't want you to get low grade. There are many ways to that gradient. That's why I think it's interesting because it could be, shifting too. Let's say for that grade competition, you're more friendly. When it comes to a state level competition, the fucking claws come out. Next thing you know, you're texting death threats and you're just doing all this shit. Could it be a tactic? Could it be genuine? That's a good question. I would enjoy seeing what someone comes up with that. There is also something that's also a gradient, uh, complications. Now, actually, no, that's another aspect. What I will say about complications is that it further blends and muddies how characters, plural, interact with each other. Uh, Good example is the friendship breaking apart. Breaking apart is purely from the complications. Now, I'm not going to retread on old ground completely. It may seem like it, but it's me just being quick-witted and saying I'm not being lazy. I'm just being creative, which, to be honest, is what all of us do if we're writing. Let's be honest. Everyone's thinking it. I'm just saying it. Another drink. So, question, which is good because every section I at least want to see if there's any questions because I don't think I set up that little hand-holding thing. So when it comes to determining a person's archetype, that goes back to making a character, singular. And when it comes to making a character, singular, there's just the question of do they matter? I mean, you don't have to ask if they matter in the wider scale of things, but you do have to ask yourself, do they matter? Hey, I have 6 characters in this story, only 3 of them truly matter. Well, you kind of follow up with whatever you want to do on that. Um, when it comes to introducing a new character, because this is the topic of characters plural, you as the reader are not, you don't know how many people are going to show up. You as the writer, you might have an idea. I say might because with some stories, depending on the cast size, if you want to call it a cast, uh, you'll end up saying, all right, well, it's just going to be 4 dorks in an apartment at max, and they're goofing around. That's all they do. You can have it be, all right, this is one character and their own personal adventure, and who they meet might not necessarily matter. Now, an interesting, odd way that I can kind of answer it is, say you go to work, you don't really pay attention to how many people are there. And until you really get to know someone, you're not going to know what their arguable archetype would be. Now, as you meet people at your new work, obviously they're not family. Obviously they're not friends. Yet. If they even have the capacity to be your friend. Now, the capacity to be a friend, of course, matters on just dozens and dozens of things. Uh, you not hating them and them not hating you being one of the most important of them, right? So when it comes to that, it depends. Uh, if they are important enough for you to focus on, then you can look into this character and then start asking the questions of, all right, who is this guy? Do they matter? When he's done interacting with your already established characters, does it really matter what they're like? Do you care? It's like if we ever met at Fair, you probably wouldn't really care about what I'm off going to do. I could be off going to get my 5th blueberry lemonade for the day. I could be going back to my room to cool off or to jerk off because, oh my god, mares everywhere. No one knows. And to be honest, no one cares. Unless you do care, then you start to say, well, what would this guy do? I don't know, there were a lot of mares. He would be tempted by that. I don't know, the Wawa is right there. You might be tempted by that. So, it seems like it's a non-answer, and to be fair, it is. But it is contextual. Strongly, strongly contextual. And if you think it's worth it, it'd be worth it. I would say it wouldn't be a bad idea to look into it in moderation. Because if I've seen anything, which I'll admit, when I give criticisms, a lot of the criticisms include things that I've actually done as well. Which is why I like to make fun of people. Because I can very easily make fun of myself. Is I'll see a lot of people focus too much on making characters singular. And they say, well, this is their zodiac, this is their favorite hobby, this is their favorite color, this is their favorite band. Just very weird, basic, general questions and thoughts and concepts. Not really stuff that show that they know them, they just know them on a surface level. Which, to be fair, when you start off, you may not even know them on a surface level. That's the conundrum of it, right? So, yeah, it's my only real answer to that. It's not a real answer, but it's my real answer. It's it's up to you. It depends. It would require so many more follow-up questions to really hash it out, which I'm not against answering questions even after this. It's just if anyone wants to bug me on whatever, by all means go for it. I am not going to stop you. Let's see, going through the next part of my outline. I'll admit it's kind of nice having an outline. I don't get distracted nearly as easily. So, there is something that I'll admit not too many people think of, I don't think, just from what I've seen, just from what I've written. When it comes to stories with characters plural and given their friends or given their enemies, a lot of people like having very just clear-cut lines of, hey, this is bad guy, this is good guy. This is the Empire versus the Rebels. The Rebels are always the good guys because, well, they say they are, obviously. What else do you need? Now, what you occasionally see, at least when it comes to, the Rebel versus Empire stuff, I'm not even talking about Star Wars, just it's one of the most classic things of those who are in power are the bad guys. Viva la revolution is the only good answer because the movie says so. Well, you're eventually going to get the rebel who betrays everyone, or you're going to get the Empire guy who betrays his own people. To what extent is usually violent, because let's face it, did this cut out? Yeah, it did. It cut out a second time. What the hell? Oh, good stuff. I don't know why it does that. Either way, going back to it, you have the rebel and then you have the Empire. They will usually have some sort of violent rebellion against one or the other, and it will just lead to people getting killed because, again, it's an action movie. Now, realistically, I say realistically in the world of fiction, imagine that. Realistically, when it comes to friends not becoming friends, or enemies no longer becoming enemies, or someone you never even thought of becoming one of those two, there's always a transformation. And the transformation is going to be what I'm going to list as a complication slash life, because that's what I typed down. And I'm a very one-to-one reader with no imagination whatsoever. Now, when it comes to the idea of betrayal, it's very easy because you can gladly just say, and then he betrays the bad guys because he is the good guy, and also he wants to touch the boobies of the good guy's girlfriend. So maybe he's not actually a good guy, he's just pretending to be one. I'm sure you can think of dozens of examples where that happens, where it's like, you know what, Sure, it's a very cheap answer, but just, whatever. Betrayal's very easy to do because people don't talk about it. What you see in certain types of stories, which is interesting, which I think is kind of better, are examples of not betrayal, but loyalty. Good example, let's go back to our D&D party. I bring up D&D a lot just because I used to play it a lot. I enjoyed DMing. I did that a good deal before I started writing in any serious capacity. But I only really arguably started with the greens, so hard to say, chicken and egg. But loyalties. Let's say you have a party going into, let's say the bard's family's castle. The bard is the prince of so and so. You're here to fuck Queen so and so in the butt, and also steal the ancient anal bead of, I don't know. I'm making it sound a lot more explicit than I need to, just for delayed comedic effect, because you have to think about it and go, what if we had a campaign that focused on that? Who knows? It might be interesting as far as you know. You don't necessarily know if it's for explicit purposes unless you know. And then if you do you tell everyone and out yourself, or do you just go, oh hey look, it's a weird egg-shaped item with a handle and a slot for a battery? Hmm, fancy that. When you get to that, and when you get the magical so-and-so of who the fuck cares, you may have the bard turn on his guys and say, listen man, we got this, but do you really need to fucking raid her jewelry box too? And the thief is like, well, yeah, it's worth like 50 gold. The DM said so. You gotta love seeing that in like in character stuff. Like the fucking DM said so. Well, I guess. All right. I guess that's your deity of worship. And it eventually gets to the point of the bard and the thief duking it out because the bard's like, dude, take it back. He's like, I'm not gonna put it back. That money's gonna go well towards my pockets, which is good for everyone. Then they duke it out. You have stuff like, say, the paladin and the thief, if your paladin's a killjoy, and it's just a thing of, hey, you're stabbing people in the back, you're being dishonorable, you're stealing stuff. I must put a stop to you because I have a stick up my ass and I don't understand what lawful good means. Then they're gonna duke it out. In a more interesting way, you may have, let's say, two friends, they've known each other for a long time, and they're suddenly, very sharply and very starkly hostile towards each other. And the reason for that is because there is a line that friends do not cross. And even ignoring the idea of two friends having a hard clash of loyalties, a hard clash of ideals, what if it's not so much a hard clash, but a very quick, deep cut? Something, something that's just not as, just, it's not big, it's not boisterous, not even necessarily expensive, but it is crossing a line where you look to someone who you're loyal to and who you thought was loyal to you and say, what the fuck did you just do? It, you just fucking killed that kid. Dude, would, how? Why? And suddenly, the loyalty and the hostility from that, the complication from this, is not that you did something massive where it's selfish, but it's the thing of, you know what? I would probably never be friends with someone who killed a kid. It'd be a little bit awkward. Thankfully, I don't have kids, otherwise they might be killed by the guy, right? But you have this situation where it's like, dude, you ended that child. I see the fucking crossbow bolt with your initials poking out one eye and out the other. What'd you do? Well, he looked like a guard. The guard's kid, maybe. What do we do about this? What do you do about this? And notice that distinct change in dialogue from what do we do about this to what do you do about this. Because suddenly, you're no longer friends. You're no longer a party at that instance. That is a very quick, almost subconscious way to say, listen, you fucked up so much. We may be loyal to each other, but this is on you. I'm not going down this road with you. That is very interesting. It's I will say, if you do focus on anything that's kind of more hardcore or what's the word that I can think of? Something that dangerous, let's call it. Something that impactful. Yeah, give the topic the respect it deserves. And it's it so many movies, especially all of these parody movies, they make light of a lot of stuff that you don't necessarily make light of if it actually happened. I understand it's for the sake of comedy, depending on your story, it may be a more comedic story, but just, you know, be aware of the type of story that you're telling. It's completely unrelated to this. It's me being on a tiny high horse. So, I'm speaking at normal level, but I'm just sitting on a very tall, tiny horse. Don't do that. You'll break their back. It's not nice to do. So, you have loyalties. You have personal ambition, which that would be. I wouldn't even say the personal ambition would really fit for the rogue and the bard example, but just personal ambition that would complicate a friendship. Let's go back to friend A and friend B. Stoners. One has a job. One's paying all the bills. Rent is due next month. Now, a complication could be the personal ambition of, you know what? What if friend A, he wants to live somewhere better. He's tired of living in the shit rat hole apartment. Friend B might not care. But if they move into a better apartment, friend B must get a job if they still want to be roommates and friends together. Well, suddenly that's a very big complication. And suddenly that's something that's going to test their friendship, possibly break it, but it might possibly strengthen it too. Hard to say. The limitations, because again I'm going down the list, the limitations would be more the thing of your friend accidentally kills a kid, or just kills someone he shouldn't have to begin with, or given most stories and most environments, if you have more realistic, quote unquote, characters plural, just killing in general. I mean, it's an odd bit given how games and how most fiction are, where it's like, oh yes, he killed this man, and then people just move on. It's a big deal. We're rather numb to it, but thinking on it when it comes to stories, if you have characters plural, go down to characters singular because character A killed character B, and that's a big deal. It leaves a lot of psychological and philosophical scars on someone. And if you care about your character singular, and you already went through their psychological and philosophical views, then it's something that you would have to look at and say, alright, how would they react if they killed someone? What if they did on purpose? What if they did on accident? What if they didn't even know that they did it? So, stuff like that, it's not necessarily part of the outline, but it's a nice little poke because I could talk for hours and hours when it comes to this shit and just bring up so many different aspects. But it seems like we have 18 minutes left on the panel, but no one's stopping me yet, unless anyone's complaining. Actually, the kid isn't free experience. If he would, that would make him a combatant to begin with. Unless you want to just bring up and say, well, he's technically a class or whatever, but, you know. But I will say that kids do violate the NAP as well. So I'm just saying, if you are a lawful neutral, you could arguably push for that. Might make you more evil, or lawful evil, but don't worry. Donate like 200 gold to a church and you'll level yourself right out. You know, it's the fable way of life. Oh, excuse me. So, limitations. That is kind of what we already expressed when it comes to doing something that someone else can't handle. The obligation is. I listed obligation separately from loyalty. The reason from that is because you don't necessarily have to be loyal to someone to have an obligation. An obligation, for example, would be paying the rent. You're not loyal to your landlord or the leasing company, but you have an obligation. You're not necessarily loyal to your family or your people, but you have an obligation. It's it can be different from the bard and rogue example of the thief stealing too much jewelry because it's not necessarily an obligation to say hey, don't steal from my mom's jewelry box. It is an obligation to say hey, do whatever, but we're not here to kill them. We're here, we're getting paid to do this. If we kill them, one, we might not get paid at all. Two, we might have thousands of people looking to kill us. So, obligation, it's a bit more nebulous. A lot of these are going to be hair splitting, but you as a writer, you need to be aware of the differences. I mean, if anyone brought up to me, hey, are you loyal to your job? No, I'm not. I mean, I have an obligation to go to work because I have to pay for shit, at least for now. I'm obligated to do a decent job because my own, outlook as a character, singular, is that, I'm not gonna just half-ass it and jerk off all day. But imagine getting paid for that. It's called OnlyFans. I don't have a loyalty towards the state I live in, and yet I don't drive like a maniac, mostly because I don't want to have a car crash. I'm all about car crash and stoners and stealing tonight, apparently. It's interesting stuff. You're not going to remember anything I said other than the stoners stealing jewelry from their mom's toolbox, or jewelry box, one of the same things. And somewhere along the lines, they need batteries and need to pay for rent. Who knows? It could be basically a story version of Thief. Who's Garrett in this equation? That's for you to decide. So, all that stuff, it's interesting. I think it's worth bringing up. I'm going to argue it's not redundant because there are differences. And when it comes to the conflict resolution of those, it's hard to say. So, next aspect I brought up is shared conflict. Now, everything that I mentioned, it tends to be character singular versus character singular. Now, we don't always have to go on this individual level. Uh, for anyone who's familiar with the games, there's Fire Emblem, where you have individual versus individual. Every bout of combat is one guy versus one guy. That's usually the level that we've been fighting on. Fighting on, talking on, same thing, really. Pen is mightier than the sword or something like that. The other side is characters plural versus characters plural. Now, I'm not gonna get that much into it as far as details go because when it comes to wider settings, when it comes to political parties, entire countries and citizenry and all that stuff, I've seen and I've talked to people who are really good at that, where they focus so much on just the intricate details of a wider society. I haven't gotten anywhere to that point when it comes to these panels and talking about this stuff, so I'm not really going to dip into it, but there's a distinct difference between, say, my opinion on my opinion on you and your opinion on me versus, say, the British people's opinion, multiple people, plural, as a singular opinion, shared opinion, polled, whatever you want to call it, versus, say, the French. And the French opinion, you know, plural people, singular taken perception on the English. I want to bring it up just because, again, like everything else that's baby simple, it's something to make you think of. Just so if you have multiple characters, singular, show up together, D&D thing. My character is from this part of the world. Oh, my character is part of this part of the country. There may be a shared conflict between them. Say, hey, you know what? This guy's a good guy. His family fought the so and so's with maybe someone I knew. Now the opposite is true. Hey, you're from that country? Oh, I'm not gonna like you. you're a fucking spy. You know, it's stuff like that where it's not really worth it for me to go into specific examples because you already have that image in your head, I would think. Everyone who listens to me is very smart. That's why you're here. That's why you're listening to me. You're very smart. Don't worry, it's not a compliment. It's just me not insulting you. Very keen difference. So that's pretty much. Let's see. I'm getting near the end of the outline, so that's nice. Maybe I should start paying attention to outlines more. The next part. Now, when it comes to friendships versus simply being an ally, there is a different way that they are made, and it's a very different way that they are improved. Same thing with different ways that they're broken, but you know, it's easy to break something. It's very challenging to build. And not just easy, not just difficult to build, but very difficult to maintain. And more so, withstand the testing. So, when it comes to a friendship, you have friend A and friend B. Now, let's say friend A gets the job. That is good for character A. If that is good for the friendship between character A and character B, then you would have something to bond over. Now, bonding, it's how friendships get closer. They get better. Obviously, if you're not going to bond with someone, you're not really going to get to know them. You're not going to be used to being around them. It's why you have to ask if the people you know almost exclusively online are even your friends. Because if you were just in a room with them for an hour, not even necessarily interacting, but they're doing their thing, they're doing, you're doing your thing, you are doing you, they are doing them. Hopefully you're not doing each other, unless you're doing that on purpose, or one of you is too drunk to say no. Again, everyone's different, right? With that, you have just that familiarity. Now, victory and loss through bonding is character A gets a job. Character B, you know what? He realizes he's being a bit of a dick. He's not really being considerate. More so, he might be a tiny bit jealous of friend A. They might not be rivals, but there might be that thing of, I bet I could do as good as him, at least. I mean, I'm not that bad a guy. Maybe. I hope. I think. So, you have friend B get a job. Now, presuming they're both happy with that, dude, we got the rent taken care of. You know, fucking go and, like, get some good booze? Hell yeah, dude. What? Listen, you get the booze, I'll get the pizza, we'll buy another copy of Resident Evil 5, and we'll just fucking game. Congrats. Wow. The biggest issue at that point is figuring out when both of you are off for the day. And you know what? You have a stronger friendship because just, you know what? Fuck it. We both have jobs. Neither of them really hate our jobs. No, don't necessarily have to like them. But everything's being taken care of. Bitchin'. Works for me. That's a good example of victory and bonding. Loss and bonding. So let's say friend A, he gets a job. Friend B doesn't. Now, for whatever reason, an important thing to bring up, this example will be a good case for it, also known as calling an example an example. So you can tell I'm very well spoken. There's going to be something of, alright, friend A gets a job, friend B doesn't get a job. Because friend A is the friend of friend B, neither of them had jobs before, he's probably not going to do good at a job. And it's important to recognize that sometimes your characters will fail. Just because they're the main character of your story doesn't, in any capacity, mean that they need to succeed everything. You know, they're not an RPG protagonist where it's like, oh, they're so friendly, everyone loves him. He gets to touch every single booby out there, not just one, but both of them at the same time and go honk honk, and you know, turkey's done. He's just, oh, he's so cool. And by the way, his name is my name, and he's popular, and he has money too, and he's a secret ninja on top of it. It's like, you don't need that shit. If you have two characters and they're both losers, they can still bond even if friend A loses that job. And you know what? Friend A and friend B, fuck. Listen, dude, rent's due. You want to just pack up and fucking skip town? And you may have friend A go, yeah, fuck it. And then you have friend A and friend B. They're still bonding through what is objectively a loss, a failure. But shit, dude, you can still be a failure and still have friends. Like me. Except I don't have friends. But it still works. And that's something that I think I see so rarely in movies. I see so rarely in just stories in general, where you have people where they don't necessarily always rise up to being a supreme victory figure. Where it's like, oh, this is, it's the growth of 40-year-old virgin. He goes from a virgin to not a virgin anymore. Oh, he's such a cool guy. It's like, you know what? I would like to see a version of the 40-year-old virgin where he doesn't get laid at the end. Where at the end of it, all of his goofy shit, he had fun with his friends. He learned stuff about himself. They all learned stuff about themselves and each other. And by the end of it, he's like, you know what? You failed your romance. You failed every persuasion and seduction check you had. You want to just hire a hooker? And then, you know what? The 40-year-old virgin just goes, nah. And ta-da! Roll credits. End of the movie. It's a failure. The dude failed to not be a virgin anymore, but it's still funny. I think that would make the movie even funnier, actually, to just have a sequel, the 41-year-old virgin, where it's more the same shit, right? But we can do Dumb and Dumber twice. Why not that twice? So the opposite is also true. I know we're about 4 minutes until the end of the panel. Uh, I don't think anyone really cares. I don't think anything is after this, so I'm just going to keep going unless anyone says otherwise. So, good stuff. We have what happens when you have just both the victors and the losers still bonding, even if they lose and even if they win. Which, something that can also be brought up, and that is also why we have, going next on my magical outline, how victory and loss can still break a friendship rather than enhance it. Now, you have friend A. He gets a job. He gets to know certain coworkers. He gets to make new friends. Man, these new friends have a lot of stuff. They have a lot of money. Ooh, this one came from a very well-off family. They have a cabin in the woods. That's nice. Your current friend doesn't have a fucking cabin in the woods. He doesn't even have, a car. You're the one with the car. Well, just as you may attempt to be friend person C, singular, you may kind of break it off with character B and say, you know what? I'm just the one paying rent. I'm going to move out. Now, keep in mind, this is going back to conflict. This is what I brought up earlier where, you know what? You used to have a friend and now you don't anymore. Why? Because there's that conflict. This is not repeating it necessarily. It's just following through of the logical conclusion of it. And that's a victory to character A. And it's very important to specify that it's a victory for character A, but it's still a loss for character B. And let's say you have the opposite, because again, we're focusing on as many corners as we can, not because you're not aware of this, but because as you're writing and as you're thinking, well, what would this guy do? Well, what would he do under this situation? Because right now, this is the two ways it could possibly go. Say, he makes the new friend, character C. Ooh, he gets invited out to the cabin in the woods. Fucking A, dude. When have you ever been invited to a cabin in the woods? I've never been invited to a cabin in the woods. Yeah, whatever. Sure. So, you have that. That's a victory for character A, and a loss for character B, because one, he's losing a friend. Two, he's probably gonna be kicked out of the apartment. Or character A is just gonna say, you know what, fuck it. Character C is talking about moving out. He's making more than me, which means I don't have to pay nearly as much. We're gonna move into our own place. Just fuck it. It's near work. It's convenient. Turns out we also like Resident Evil 5, so sorry, bud, you're old news. Now, through that action alone, you have so many interactions going on that you have to think of. You have to think of. I'm gonna say it again, a third time because it's important. You have to think of. Because it is the creation of a new friendship and the loss of another friendship. And it's not even a concrete gain of a friendship, but it is an assured loss of a friendship. Because, following the psychology and philosophy of character B, dude, we're supposed to be fucking ride or die. Like, why do you care about money so much now? Why do you care? What, a fucking cabin? It doesn't even have internet. Dude has Resident Evil 5. Dude, it's on a different console. You're not gonna have our saves. All of your fucking weapons are gone. You're gonna have to build that shit back up. He's not even good. Dude, he likes the weapon types you do. You're not even gonna be able to use the same fucking guns. He likes the shotguns and the automatic weapons and leaves you the fucking sniper rifles. Dude, you hate sniping. You're shit at it. That's why I do it. Because you suck. And because you're friends, you get to say that to each other. But if you have friend C say, dude, you fucking suck at the sniper rifle. Well, trouble in paradise. Honeymooners aren't working out so well, are they? So, I'm going a bit more into detail for this, but there's so much going on when it comes to the breakdown of a friendship at the, with that being the catalyst for a new friendship being gained. And keep in mind, it's not even necessarily friendship. Let's go back to what we said. What makes a friendship? But could be a new possible coworker, a colleague. Maybe being around him will boost you up professionally, get character A to have a better job. And there's so many details that you can focus on this, depending on the story, and depending on the psychology and philosophy of character A, because they might not even think that far. This might be just side effects. It could be they're a Malkavian little bastard, and they're just, I see my chance, I'm gonna fucking take it. So, there's that. Long story short on that is that it is a victory, but still a broken friendship. Now, the opposite. Now, keep in mind, character A, he thinks of all this shit. He's just, man, it's gonna be awesome. The CEO has his daughter who works here. She works in HR. She's single, as far as I know. I'm gonna swoosh into that shit. I'm gonna become the CEO's son-in-law. Gonna do all this shit. Leave this fucking trash behind. Well, that's the thing about hitting on someone from HR. You get fired very quickly, depending on what you do and how many people see it. And if the CEO is involved personally. So, alright. Character A loses his job. He's going with character B. You know what? They have a few beers together, and character A is like, man, I was so fucking ready to leave this shit life behind. I was gonna fuck that chick in the vagina. I was gonna no longer be the 40-year-old virgin. We would have just so many kids, and I would have such an awesome career. And man, I fucked it up. Now I'm here in this fucking trash apartment again, playing that stupid fucking game. Character B, dude, you hate this game? We've played it for like 500 hours. That's all we do. We've lived in this place, and we both thought it was the fucking tits when we got it, because it's our own place. Dude, we get to hang out every day. And if we don't, dude, we still have different rooms. We get to eat whatever we get to eat. Going to the store, it's cool because I buy, you fly. Or the opposite. There are so many things that used to be a good thing, and now character A just goes, man, this fucking sucks. And keep in mind, I'm not going to get that much deeper into it, but we can go deeper into it. By the way, I'm 3 minutes over the panel time. Fuck the con rules. Fuck the popo. Not Perp, though. He's a cool guy. Oh, he's still there. No, I didn't even know he was listening. Okay. So, you have this stuff going on, and it's like, you know what? Character A failed, but at worst, he unloaded, he showed character B, and everything got fucked up. So, character B and character A, now they got nothing. And not even that, they're not even friends anymore because character A just he fucking unloaded. He said everything he said. He had every just ounce of vitriol that he just spewed all at once. Now, of course, it could be from frustration. It could be from genuine anger that he had a higher chance and he failed. There are a lot of ways that could explain why he had that outburst. You, as a writer, it's on you. It's if you're anything resembling a decent writer, you'll think about this. I'm not saying good. I'm saying decent. I'm not talking about quality or execution. That's all mechanical, and that's for the fags over at FimFiction to start harping about. This is all conceptual, and this is all focused. This is all just, you know what, we need this shit. We need to figure out and focus why. So, that by itself could lead to a lot of things, but it might not. It could be that character A is just left with nothing, and then character B just also left with nothing. Fucking sucks, but that's sometimes how life is. And your stories, like life, shouldn't always be squeaky clean. Make it awkwardly real. Make it painfully real. Make it to the point where someone reading this can understand those emotions from both sides and then just go, God damn, this sucks. It sucks to see this situation. It sucks to even read about it. Just, you get that secondhand discomfort and you're just, I don't want to read the rest, but how does it end? I do see a question, Allies versus Rivals. That is actually the next part that I was going to go into. The idea of Fireforge versus Tree Shade friends. Now, this is probably redundant because all I've been talking about for more than half of this, I imagine, have been types of friendships, levels of friendships, and the differences between, the proverbial Fireforged of, hey, character A and B, they grew up in just the shittiest conditions imaginable. They grew up just without a single pot to piss in between the two of them. They had nothing. And yet, here they are. And you know what? After this thing where character A just unloads on character B and just, you know what? This entire life that we thought were okay, I realize I'm not okay with it anymore. It fucking sucks. People look down on me. People look down on you too, but you don't really seem to care, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. It's up for character singular to resolve. And other character singular to say, hey, this does bother me, versus it doesn't bother me. But regardless of that breaking or bonding a friendship, you have that aspect of, you know what? We went through a lot, and this is where we can't handle it anymore. That is worth a lot more than, say, character A and character B, or not character B, but character C, the rich guy. They're friends. They'll say they're friends, but if anything happens, eh, just, cop pulls them over. Character A and character B, they know what to do. They know what to say. That depending on the disposition of the cop, they've been pulled over so many fucking times. They got this. Character A and character C just shrugs and says, "Officer, I wasn't smoking anything. This guy was. The smell in the car is from him. It's the first time he's ever been in my car. You can take a drug test right now. I'm gonna come back clean." Character A is gonna go, dude, not fucking cool. Now, keep in mind, they're friends, right? Now, this goes back. There's a lot of callbacks because again, I'm talking in circles, but it's the different contextual twist that I'm pushing on this, and the different aspects of the different twist I'm focusing on. Or that's the excuse I'm giving. If you have a better excuse, fucking go for it. With stuff like that, it matters a lot. Because with a lot of friendships, when it comes to friendships, hostilities, even not necessarily friendships, but just companions. A party in D&D. They're not friends, but there's a difference between just a bunch of farmers with pitchforks versus these are two, fucking omniscient gods who've been killing dragons and fucking tree elves for 50 years, and suspiciously they still look like that they're 20. Don't worry about it. They're both monks level 20. You have that type of stuff where ignoring the question of whether or not they're friends versus companions versus allies versus coworkers or colleagues, whatever title you want to come up with, that's effectively the same shit, right? There's a difference between that deepness to it and that depth, that Johnny depth that you see when it comes to characters and their friendship is that's where you end up seeing that bonding and that breaking. Because it's worth mentioning that breaking of a friendship is not always permanent, and that bonding of a friendship is not always permanent. It might not even be long lived. Say character A and B get kicked out of their apartment, they're that much closer for a bit, and then they eventually just say, you know what, dude, I need to figure something out. And then it's like, yeah, I'm gonna figure something out too. And then they just drift apart. It's anticlimactic, it's not entertaining, it's not violent, bloody, or sexy, but it's the way the world works. And sometimes, even in stories, the most unrealistic medium across all of history, even those can be boring at times. Sad but true. So, there's not a lot to go into that, just to focus on the depth of all of this. I saw the question on rivalry, which I do want to bring up. Even when it comes to rivals, there's something of if you've had some dude as a rival for decades, that positive and negative is going to be that much stronger compared to just, hey, you said that guy was your rival. You know, he's getting the shit kicked out of him by this weird mutant zombie dude. Now, keep in mind that dude is, or likely was, your rival. Uh, he's gonna die in like 3 seconds if you don't help him. But if you help him, you might die too. Does he really matter? Does he really matter? Now, compare that to a guy that, you're level 1, he was level 1. You're the same class, but different schools. Like Witcher, School of the Wolf versus School of the Cat. You've known each other for 50 years. Again, fuck tree elves and whatever stupid shit I said like 5 minutes ago, I don't remember. You have all that stuff. Now, this dude is getting the shit kicked out of him. Hey, dude, if you don't save him, he's gonna die. Yeah, I would have to save him because he fucking sucks. And then you go in and save him. It's like, well, you're both rivals in that situation, but there's a difference of that depth, that interconnection where, again, goes into character singular of thing of, alright, would rival A have saved rival B? Yes. Now, would rival B have saved rival A? Maybe, right? It could be that rival B doesn't save rival A, but just says something to piss him off. It's like, dude, you fucking suck, lol. And that lol makes character A just fucking spaz out, because how dare he say lol in IRL? Just, you don't do that. It's not kosher. So, it's worth mentioning. A lot of this stuff, it really makes you think, maybe. But it's stuff where, as you're thinking of conflicts, as you're thinking of characters plural, or character singular, doing something to character singular, depending on the perspective you have at the time of writing or planning, you're not necessarily going to think of these things. You may know them, you may kind of have that subconscious instinctual understanding, but for educational purposes, especially for this, it's worth mentioning and saying, you know what, this needs to be brought up. I'm not 100% sure, and if you're the writer, you don't need to know 100% sure, but you do need to ask that question, because, unlike your characters, time is frozen for you. You can write out a 5-minute long conversation over the course of 5 hours or 5 days, or 5 months, depending on if you really have to sit there and go, I'm really fucking stuck. And, for the record, it's fine to be stuck. Not everything's going to flow as gracefully, because you might not necessarily get stuck on being at a complete loss, but you may be stuck because it's just that level of discomfort, and you gotta fucking step away. So we're about 15 minutes past, but again, I don't think anyone cares. Yes, welcome to Die. Welcome to Fry. before I go into the conclusion, and I guess ask any more questions if anyone cares, uh, there is the question of allies versus rivals. So, allies versus rivals. What about friends who are a nuisance to each other, barely even friends? How would you handle that? At that point, when it comes to if they're barely even friends, I wouldn't really say that they're friends. And when it comes to being a nuisance, it depends on the severity, because that's the question of it, right? The severity of being a friend versus the severity of being a nuisance. If you're really good friends with someone, you can probably deal with blowing their nose in the most fucking disgusting way. Or worse, they fucking just snort it up and go, and then they do it for like 5 fucking minutes and just Jesus fucking Christ, dude, are you deep throating your own shit? What the fuck are you doing? Stop it. Get some help. Fucking blow your nose into what you fucking blow your loads into. And then if you're the other friend, that could be a thing of, ew, no, my towel's for the snot, my sock is for the cock. Just get it through your straight fucking head. That level of stuff where it's like, if you barely know someone and you bring up that level, they're not going to talk to you anymore. They're just going to say, man, it sure crunches a lot when you walk by. So, yeah, it's a very complicated question. I understand it, but at the same time, it's a very simple question because it's just the question of how much of a pain in the ass are you? How much does it matter to the character individual versus the dynamic of the characters plural? Uh, let's say the bard and the rogue, because I apparently like that dynamic duo now. I'm not going to answer why because I don't know why. The bard may always hate that the rogue is just the first thing a person does, like seconds within them turning into fucking corpses. He rifles through their shit. He just fuck whatever shit they have going on. Just what? What's his scabbard like? Ooh, what's his sword like? He stabbed you pretty easy through that shit. You mind if I take it? Your blood, but I'm the one who landed the killing blow. Hey, he has a half-eaten sandwich. We just tear off an inch of the sandwich. The rest of it should be fine. Oh, never mind. It has a little bit of blood on it. Well, I'll pick apart the sandwich that has the blood on it. Now, to someone who isn't a friend of that rogue, they'll just go, dude, what the fuck? He's still bleeding. Like he's gone, but his body is still exsanguinating, and it's just I don't fucking care. Likewise, the rogue may hate that the bard keeps humming little tunes to himself. It's like, what do you think? What? Why do you do this little da 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 after a fight? Well, that's what I do. It hypes me up. It makes me feel accomplished. Stop it. No. And they fucking go back and forth depending on how much of a nuisance they are versus how much they are friends. That may be a thing where they never really get over it. But it could be a thing of like one of these days the bard, he looks at the rogue pointing out the pack of this dead dude, that they killed together because for whatever reason that's just how they roll. And he's like, listen, dude, if he has a wineskin, can you just toss me that? I'm thirsty as hell. And then the rogue will either do that and just say, yeah, sure, or he may kind of, give the bard a little bit of shit and say, nah, you don't want this. You don't want this wine. Ooh, smells like mead. Actually, sip, sip. Actually, no, it's Merlot. Ooh, you'd like Merlot, but no, this is from a dead guy. You don't want dead guy Merlot. You just, nah, fuck you. And, of course, depending on their dynamic, it could be, it could be teasing. It could be like a actual philosophical conversation of, well, what made you change your mind? Now you want the dead guy Merlot? Or it could be, the teasing thing of, nah, you don't want it. You surely you have stuff to drink, right? You don't even like Merlot anymore. Yeah, notice he said anymore, which means he liked it in the past. Small details like that can matter. So with that, it depends on the dynamic. When it comes to the allies versus rivals aspect of that, when it comes to the nuisance of friendship, arguably, it depends on the rivalry. Not only does it matter on the character singular versus the character singular, but it focuses on what they are rivals for. Say you have the bard and the rogue. Both of them are swordsmen. Both of them are equally accomplished. In fact, when it comes to fights, they like to stab some dude in the exact same way. So, it's like playing horse. See? Look, I brought it all together. It's officially a horse-related panel because I brought up the game horse. Alright, rogue stabs the guy in the gut. Bam. From the right to the back left. Fucking beat that dipshit. And then suddenly the bard is like, alright, motherfucker, I gotcha. So, while this is a life and death situation, they're so wrapped up in each other that they're just doing called shots. And called shots require a higher roll to successfully do. This isn't turning into a D&D panel, I promise. This is just for the sake of communication and what they're trying to do. Which is stupid, because as they are competing, you know, getting beaten to shit, they are still insisting upon one another. You know what? I can do better than this. You know what? I can't do better than this, but I can fucking do better than you. And then they just do that, and it's like, aha, I got the killing blow. And it's like, no, I did, because he was still going. He was still making that noise when you stabbed him in the fucking throat. I did it. He didn't make that noise. He just fell over. I win. So it's interesting stuff. I mean, you could both argue that the characters singular are sociopathic. That would be interesting. One of my favorite games out there is the first Drakengard game, because our most based man alive, Kime, he just doesn't even speak. He kills people by the fucking thousand. And other people, they don't really care for it, but you know they wouldn't call him their friend, but he's an ally. Fireforged for sure, enough to fight giant space babies, but it's another topic. So yeah, I don't know how well that answered your question, but you can see how easily I went into specifics, just because you have to have the two characters in mind to ask how that would be handled. Because how the bard and how the rogue would handle a situation like that is different from character A and character B, which we've established through going into their backstory contextually that they're stoners. Stoners don't really stab each other unless you're that chick from California. Then, apparently pot really is violent. Hard to say. So, even stuff like that, as we've been going through this, there's at least a few characters you can think of on at least the surface level and understand how they may react to others under different situations. And not necessarily 100% of the time. Because when you're writing a story, it's not what they're doing 100% of the time. It's what they're doing in that instance. And then they have to deal with the consequences. Alright, since the only thing really left is the conclusion, and it's not a lot of stuff, I'll just continue to ask questions. Because I enjoy it. It's nice to see questions. So, the next one, how would you handle romance from a rivalry? That's a good question. It depends on the type of rival. Not just, to what extent they're rivals, but to also what extent is the romance. Is it something kind of teasing, like, say rival A and rival B, the bard and the rogue? What if the bard is male and the rogue is female, right? Because the bard doesn't want the rogue to steal jewelry from his mom, the queen's jewelry box. See, I'm tying everything together. Believe it or not, people, this is how I write fucking stories. You bullshit and you think about stuff more than zero, and then suddenly you have a fucking story. It's like we're creating a full dynamic between this bard and rogue guy going on here. So say the bard and the rogue. Rogue is female, bard is male. Now, say we go back to the thing of, you know what, the bard goes to the rogue. Listen, dude, I'm thirsty. Does he have anything to drink? The rogue, maybe they're still rivals. They're both still swordsmen, and you can tell it's the rivalry. It's just how they act. And then you have the rogue go, there's something. Sip, sip. Toss it over. And, maybe the bard is aware because culturally, if suddenly they're Japanese schoolboys or schoolgirls or something, oh no, it's an indirect kiss. Oh, oh my, Dios mío, the heart flutters. The shit shingles. You have stuff like that where, again, that by itself, not only is that a subtle example, if it's even recognized as such, but just, it could be a sign of flirting. It could be kind of a more standoffish thing of, aha, you drink after me. You know, what if this becomes a habit? Whenever the bard orders something, the rogue, she fucking steals it because she's good at stealing. She takes a good old swig, goes, tastes good. And then, another subtle indicator, what if the bard drinks from the exact same angle that the rogue did? Ooh, another indirect kiss. Culturally, if that's significant, and if the rogue is the one putting down stuff and the bard is picking it up and throwing down his own shit, suddenly you have a rivalry and what we call sexual tension. Delicious. The opposite is, say, the bard gets fed up with it, or he just kind of says, dude, fucking knock it off, buy your own. You already have most of our money anyway. And, the romance gets rebuffed. And then, we can go back and forth because at that point, you have something awesome because you have characters, singular, ping-ponging back and forth. And if they're already rivals, if they already have that established connection, well, one, the bard is not going to sell out the rogue because they're already traveling companions, they're already rivals, and now at least one of them is trying to put another layer into their relationship. And I use relationship as character singular being with character singular in any capacity because not every relationship is romantic, obviously, as we discussed at the very start of this. So as I like that question. It's a good question. There's a lot of ways it can go. So, next question that was right under it. Do you think stories ultimately always revolve around one singular character, or do you think it's possible to have a story where the narrative is perfectly balanced between multiple leads? I'm not going to say that's a trick question, but it is extremely difficult to focus on the perfectly balanced aspect because you have to ask, what makes them balanced? If you focus on the perspective of, let's say, character A, you know, you could argue he had the more growth out of the two because character B doesn't get a job. Character A gets a job. Well, he may have more growth, but does that necessarily mean that there's more focus on him narratively? If you focus on character B more, well, he might not necessarily have that growth. And as we mentioned before at Marefair with the singular character, not every character always necessarily goes through a cycle and not always necessarily, growing or shrinking. Don't blame me if they shrink. It's cold outside. It's winter, okay? Technically. So when it comes to that, I think a lot of stories tend to focus on singular characters more because when you have an ensemble cast, eventually you'll get those who get left out. And I have to say that immediately, characters who get left out, that's not necessarily on purpose. Because when it comes to certain characters, especially if you have like a big old ensemble cast, again, Game of Thrones, there's so many characters to focus on, you're eventually going to have those who are quote unquote important. And I say that in quotations because they're, quote unquote important depending on the situations that you as the writer choose to focus on. Uh, Notice throughout this entire thing, I'm not bringing up anything I've written because I don't fucking care if anyone's read anything that I've written. It's just, I don't care. So, with that bit of egotistical stuff brought up, it's not an advertisement, by the way. It's something where certain characters are just, they're not the focus. Uh, Now, the focus it's not just necessarily the perspective, but it's the situation. Now, if you have, say, 5 characters, and you have character A and B. Now, there are 5 characters. There's characters A, the stoner who gets a job. Character B, the stoner who doesn't get a job. Character C, the coworker who has the fancy family and cabin in the woods and all that goofy shit. Say there's characters D and E. Well, if you start with character A and B together, ultimately you're just not going to have as much with character C. Unless, possibly, character A or B gets left behind. Now, there is a possibility that you may have character A, character B, and character C all ending up friends together. Or, quote unquote, friends. Positive relationships that may be more, colleagues than actual friends. If you focus just on those three guys, well, there's still character D and E. What if that's another coworker? What if it's their supervisor? What if it's character C's girlfriend? After a certain point, who fucking cares? With that, it would depend on who the focus is on the start of the story and then how that evolves. Because it may be, let's say we write the same story 3 times, right? You have character A who ends up alone, character A who still is friends with character B, and then character A who then is still friends with or who becomes friends with character C. Likely at the cost of character B. Now you may have a nice little golden route of the fourth one, where character A becomes friends with character C, and then character B gets on board. Now, depending on how that goes, let's say character A ends up alone. You could focus on character B, but then that makes you have to have the question of, genuinely, whose story is this? Because a story focuses most importantly on a character singular. That's why at Marefair the focus was on the character singular. Because without a character singular, you don't have a story. So you have to have that focus. Now, if you went from character A as the focus, as arguably either the narrator or the apparent protagonist, if you go from character A, he ends up alone, and then you switch entirely to character B for just as long, I would argue there would have to be a purpose for it. Because if character A and B split up, and they're never friends again, they never talk to each other again, well, more likely than not, you're probably not going to focus on both of them. Not in the same way. Because you then have a crisis as a writer of, alright, well, who's the real focus here? Who's arguably the protagonist? Is it character A or character B? It's you have the bard and the rogue. The rogue steals from the bard's mom's jewelry box as they steal her magical sex toy of, I don't know, dragon lancing, but not the type of lancing you're thinking, given the context of everything else. I mean, it'd be a thing of, we're focusing on the rogue and the bard, and now we hard stop and focus on the bard's mom, the queen. And then we focus on the queen for so much stupid shit. The thing with that is not only would that be extremely jarring to the reader, but it would be jarring to you too, because you have this story of these two rival, possibly romantically entangled, let's say criminals, because a rogue usually is played as a criminal, a bard arguably played as a criminal, and it's just, without splitting hairs, they're not heroes, they're really good killers and thieves. They're criminals. Not split hairs over it. It would be very jarring in a lot of ways to focus on that. Now, if it were in the service of foreshadowing or anything like that, you could argue, but then you're also getting into the issue of going way beyond your scope. Because depending on the perspective that you have, see, now you got me talking mechanical shit now. Depending on the type of perspective that you have, which is, the limited third person, the second person, the first person, whatever it is, it's going to be just jarring all over to focus on someone else entirely. But if it would be to have them be perfectly balanced and included, you could, it would be at the cost of something else. because, you write 50,000 word story, there's only so much those 50,000 words can convey, especially depending on the format in which you write it, because suddenly 50,000 words may be a week's worth of situations, or it may be 3 hours. Because, again, everyone loves to have a thesaurus and sound oh so educated and elaborated. Or, yeah, elaborated. There you go. Actually, I could see someone saying elaborated, unironically. So, stuff like that, it's just, it's it's a very interesting situation to have. It depends on the purpose of the story and the purpose of the characters. So, of course, other stories I haven't been paying attention to the chat stuff. So I do not see a question mark, but I'm still reading stuff, so I'm going to interpret it as a question. So, speaking about time, about being frozen for you, but not your characters, how do you get a balance of your character reacting perfectly in tense situations versus them acting like a dumbass for the sake of trying not to be a Mary Sue? That's a goofy, goofy thing to ask because I don't try to look like a Marty Stew. It's a very silly thing to say as an answer, but you have to understand that a character, to them, they're a real person. And to a character, singular, you have to treat them like a real person. Now, due to again, I keep referencing it just because it's what I go off of and it's what I've already established, so I'm just going to keep going with it. When it comes to the aspect of psychology and philosophy, when it comes to the balance of your character reacting, see, perfectly is, I think that's a lie. There is no perfect reaction to a tense situation. If you've been in a tense situation, you can argue that you might have done the right thing, you've done the smart thing, but you might not have done it perfectly. If someone pulls a gun on you and you fucking run away, well, you kind of tripped over yourself. You still got shot at, but you didn't act perfectly. But you made it out, right? And then there's the question of, did it need to be perfect? So, the reacting perfectly, that depends on the character. Now, and you have to ask if that is reacting perfectly in character for them or acting perfectly when it comes to objective results. Now, let's say if your character reacts perfectly to their own sake, the bard and the rogue, they get held up. The rogue ends up mouthing off. It's like, dude, your dagger's longer than your cock. Why do you think it's in front of your pants? And the bard is just, dude, fucking shut up, okay? They got 3 crossbowmen. They're out of melee range. And we're both fucking tired. Stop it. Now, the rogue may not react perfectly in that situation for survival, but that rogue, depending on her personality, depending on a lot of aspects that, as you, for the writer, you are responsible for, at least understanding, if not transcribing, you have to be able to go, you know what? Things could be a lot easier, but she's not fucking shutting up. And it could be, maybe the bard did something before. You don't know that. It could be the fucking wine is gone. Bard fucking drank it all. They got nothing but fucking pea water. And they don't want to be Bear Grylls. Bear Grylls apparently, exist in this fantasy situation. They don't want to drink their own pee, goddamn you. Even if it does smell like wine. Trust me, it's a lie. Trust me on that. From writer to writer, trust me. So, there's the question of which perfect. When it comes to the aspect of them being a Mary Sue, Mary Sues are just, honestly, they're goofy. They're so fucking goofy. I mean, we all know what a Mary Sue is. We've seen multiple Mary Sues. We've seen of course, we've seen the Star Wars thing. We've seen like Twilight. I haven't seen Twilight, but trust me, I remember when Twilight was big, and it was the thing of here's the most plain-faced assetless, just blank canvas of a chick, and you have two beings who are superhumanly strong and superhumanly hot, beating the shit out of each other just so she will, I don't know, just so that they will have the honor of saying that she is theirs, just for them to go behind one's back towards the other, because she doesn't understand what loyalty is. it's, it's we've all seen those things, and the biggest question is if your character is a Mary Sue, like in practice, like realistically, I would have to ask if you ever went into her when it comes to the psychology and the philosophy. If you just have a character that just always wins, again, kind of like almost like an RPG protagonist or even a JRPG protagonist, if you really want the worst examples. Let's be honest here. With that, you should be very keenly aware of someone's strengths and weaknesses. I would argue that a character's weaknesses is far more defining than a character's strengths. Good example. The work that you do and the work that I do, it's not so unique in the world that no one else can't fucking do it. If you quit your job today, if I quit my job today, you know what? It may suck, but the companies we work for, the people we work for, they will find someone who can do our job. In that way, we aren't fucking Mary Sue's. Not at all. So, our strengths ultimately don't matter, but our flaws, our weaknesses. For me, my flaws and weakness being myself. That's an entire laundry list. Your perfect self, uh, you probably don't have that many weaknesses. You're you're the coolest guy that could ever be, and you know what? I feel honored just talking about you. I would gladly commit murder just so I can buy you something at Wawa. That's how cool you are. Now, even if you do have a tiny flaw or two, like your farts don't smell like fucking flowers, that's fine. People pay good money for your farts because you're still just that cool. That's something where that's still a very obvious Mary Sue, even if you have extremely superficial, quote unquote, flaws that serve no purpose other than to make them seem that much more endearing. You know, like a cripple who is the best at basketball, despite being a cripple. It can be inspirational, but it's not realistic. Not unless it's like actual magic bullshit, and at that point, you can argue it's not Mary Sue, it's actual magical bullshit. Now, depending on how you write it and depending on how you frame it, you could try very hard to do the Mary Sue thing and only at the very end say, "Oh no, it's magic, lol." So it's stuff like that where I wouldn't worry about the Mary Sue stuff unless you you haven't paid much attention to the character. Uh, I can't really imagine that many situations where you would risk someone being a Mary Sue. Because when you see them succeed, they're probably in their element. Uh, Hold on, just got a message. Speaking of, by the end of all of this, I was told I'm free to do a movie. There is a movie I want to do that focuses on characters, plural, Reservoir Dogs. It's, I think, Tarantino's first movie. Given we've got the okay for it, if anyone wants to, I can put it up. I think I have it anyway. And it's a good movie. If I don't have it, I might just have to look around and put on a different movie, which is fine too. Trust me, there's plenty of movies I could put up. Uh, but as a quick aside, I would recommend if you haven't seen it already to watch Reservoir Dogs. About a year or two ago, I found out that Tarantino writes his scripts kind of like I write my stories, in that he focuses on the characters first and foremost. And the way that he describes writing them is it's actually really similar to kind of how I think of how I write mine, where he's focusing on them, what they would do, and just after a certain point, he's just telling you what they're doing. He's not making them do shit. They're doing their shit. He's just writing down what's happening. He's the fly on the wall. So that's a good movie. If I don't have it, and I want to say I do. If I don't, I at least recommend it. It's very much worth watching. I'm looking through some of my folders to see if I have it, but I shouldn't because here I'm just getting distracted by shit. I don't know if I have it. I can't see it right now. Whatever. Moving on. Let's see. Yeah, getting stuck on a story sucks. I will say I can't really imagine too many times I've gotten stuck on a story per se. Uh, it's not ego talking. It's just the biggest things that have really bugged me is just the tense, the intensity, and just depending on how positive or negative it is, it's just that it's rough. Mare piss is different. If you say so. I mean, yes. If you don't put it up on your stream, YouTube will take it down. Yeah, yeah. It's if someone can grab it, I mean that'd be cool too. It's worth watching, and I forgot that this is technically on YouTube. Which what I'll probably do is I'll chop it up. I still need to make that PwnTube account and then just re-upload stuff there. So another question. I didn't mean to leave you hanging there. Thankfully, chat is so blisteringly fast, and I'm such an awesome man that I can keep up with it. Could the world and the mechanics of the world be seen as one of the main characters, or is it just something that comes natural or something not pondered on enough normally? I will say this. It will probably be a few more panels before I get into what I will call the world building aspect, uh, because the the focus I'm having, both when it comes to writing my own stupid shit and when it comes to this, is I want to focus on the character singular outward. So at the end of this, which it has been the end of this, officially, we've gone from a character singular, what makes them, what breaks them, into characters plural, what breaks them together, and what makes them together. Now, when you have characters singular and characters plural, the setting, it doesn't matter. I mean, the setting matters, but right now we can have a fully functional story. We can have a fully functional story with a character singular. We can have a fully functional character with characters plural. Now, to an extent, of course, you can have a story if you have nothing but the history of the world. And you could open up Dwarf Fortress right now and have 1,500 years of history. Now, the paradox of that is if you have a story that is focused just on the world and the setting itself, it's going to have people involved, for better or worse. It's just they're going to have entities. If you want to be a wisecrack and say, well, there aren't any people in this setting, just robots. Well, congrats, you've now made Nier and Nier Automata. Sorry, Yoko Taro beat you to it. And even if they're robots, not people, they're still characters singular and characters plural. So, you know. That's why the world building it's going to be probably one of the last things I bring up and focus on just because I think it's not vestigial, it's just everyone's life, everyone's story started way before they understood the world existed outside of their room. When you were a kid, you didn't care about the Mujahideen. You didn't care about commies and fascists and fancy flags and stupid shit like that, which arguably is still stupid shit. You didn't care about that. You focused on, cool, when mom gets home, dude, she's gonna have dinner. When dad gets home, we're gonna talk about going fishing. Fucking sweet. And then you have to go to school. Oh, fucking school, it's the worst. Jesus Christ, who thought of school, you fuckers? Ugh, that's a setting you didn't want to be in. And then from there, you focus more on learning other people, and your life as a character, singular, starts getting more spread out because your characters, plural, also known as family, or friends of the family, those are the only people you've ever been around, and your only setting, your entire world, was a house, or an apartment, or, you know, a series of vehicles and shiny colors. So it would be interesting to see the mechanics of the world or a world itself be seen as a main character. Because to an extent, you would have to give them something resembling agency, right? Because if you are a character, then you have your psychology and philosophy, because you have to be a defined character. When it comes to, say, we've brought this up before, a consensus, singular, of many characters, plural, as a country, like the French versus the English. You could argue you can do a bit of a history lesson and make the entire story of the British Empire, but, and I say this because I'm a bit of a history buff, but it's almost exclusively going to focus on the people who led that country, because ultimately their world, the British Empire, is still led by characters. You could kind of personify them if you're the weird Axis Hentelia type guy, or if you're just like the little political meme balls. You can do that type of stuff too, but they're ultimately caricatures, and I don't know how well you could, in earnest, genuinely write something decent with that. That said, I can't say, or I'm not going to say it can't happen. I don't see it happening. Uh, Something that comes naturally versus something not pondered on. Well, as I've spoken before, I'll say this. The most I'll go into my greens is when it comes to the stuff I've written on bootleg, it started off with a character singular focus, and then it eventually turned into characters plural focus. Now, as I've written other greens for the bootleg thread, it's roughly the same continuity, if not different possibilities. The little quote unquote if scenarios that I've done. So, through these stories, you've had the world open up more, and you've had precedent of what's been allowed. And to an extent, throughout the certain type of greens, you've had the culture and the world change because of that. Now, I wouldn't say that the world and the culture has become a character in of itself, but I can say that the consequences of the world and how it has changed has affected the characters singular and the characters plural. Uh, it's something where it depends. At Fair, I spoke to a guy who's an incredibly fucking smart guy. He focused extremely well on the setting and the world and technological advances. But here's the fun thing. Technological advances are usually spurred by people, singular, or people, plural. So even though you have all the focus, you're after a while glancing away from the individual people. I mean, if you want a good example of that having done in a decent way, you could look at Warhammer 40K, because at that point it's so massive, it's so grandiose that you could look at planets and say this hive planet, you know, still got exterminated, through exterminatus, because even though you had such a massive war, they didn't fight good enough. And to some people, they just say, you know what? You guys didn't fight hard enough. You really escaped. You valued your own lives rather than the lives of the Imperium. You're a heretic. And then suddenly, all their sacrifices were for absolutely fucking nothing. Their attempts to stave off death, and to at least tell their story, has been ruined utterly and absolutely by the people who were supposed to save them. Now, keep in mind the paradox of me focusing on the character, singular, and characters, plural, over the fate of this world. So, I can only answer in the way that I know. I don't really think you can. If you can, I'd like to see it happen. It would be interesting, but when you have collectives and anything that large, you have to be able to scale down and keep that consistency going. So, yeah, I got, hey, Reservoir Dogs. Bitchin'. Sweet. Uh, that'll probably have to be added to the playlist, I suppose. I don't think I should add that since it's the YouTube thing. If I was using Picardo, not much of a shill, but the bootleg SciTube, whenever that goes on, which half the time I just have music on there, I've used Picardo and I've streamed a lot of movies. It's good stuff. So, movies being worked on, that's cool. So, another question which is also interesting. You could technically make a story, or yeah, technically make a story without characters by writing about animals, but then you would come up with a David Attenborough style documentary. Yeah, and that's the thing. Even if you don't focus on quote unquote characters, if you're writing about individual animals, you'll eventually come up with a hierarchy that says, here's the leader, here's the mom, here's the new hunter, if you don't just give them outright names. And then suddenly you have characters anyway. So, yeah. It's and if you've ever seen like the Animal Planet documentaries that they have, you almost always have these like characterized animals and then repeated footage until you start to recognize them, and then you have individuals. It's just the way things go with that. Another question: how do you deal with friends who have romantic feelings for each other but have worries of messing up what they have already? Suppose that's kind of an internal conflict. It is. It is both a conflict or an conflict. No, a conflict. Haha, I said it right the first time. Get fucked. It is both a conflict to the character singular as it is the character's plural. Now, depending on the type of friendship that they have, which, again, I'm not a sociologist or whatever, any goofy shit like that, but just look at it from a character perspective. Uh, when it comes to characters who have romantic feelings for each other, again, the rogue and the bard. See, it's like throughout the entirety of this, I've made a story, and to prove that this is not a writing panel, we're making a story. We're just not writing it out. Aren't I so clever? So when it comes to friends who have romantic feelings for each other, but they're concerned about messing up what they already have, there's the issue, or not even necessarily the issue. The question is if they've already spoken about it yet. If they've spoken about it, if they're communicating, then that's different. If it is an individual, which, it takes two to tango, if you have the bard who is concerned about it, or the rogue who is concerned about it, now keep in mind, it would be very interesting to see the rogue trying to bring up sexual tension and trying to attract the bard, but also having slight conniptions or concerns about it. That's an interesting thing. It's a bit more complex, but it would be worth noting because, not all the time is it full speed ahead. If you're getting to know someone new, especially in the dating type, you're not always, after a certain while, you're kind of like, I talked to him a lot yesterday. I want to talk to him today. Shit like that. When it comes to that, it depends on the character's singular, and then if they communicate that or show any signs of hesitation, regret, anything negative as a plural, you know. Uh, it would depend on their relationship because, say, we went through our previous relationship dynamics, right? Let me scroll back up on my stuff. If they are familial, they're familial and they're friends and they have romantic feelings for each other. That already answers a lot of questions and brings up even more questions. If they're adversarial, well, if they're friends but adversarial, that could mean they're rivals. It could mean anything else. I mean, again, it's a lot of the shit that I'm saying. It could easily be put into like pie charts, the two blending circles charts. I fucking forget the academic names for things. I don't really care. Venn diagrams. There you go. You can do a lot of shit and just make it simpler to digest on a visual level, but I don't care. There's a lot of stuff like that. It would depend on the details, and then once the details are established, you would have to look at the characters individually and then again as a plural. It'd be interesting to see what pops up though, because a lot of people they stop. A lot of people just go with it. It's the brake, the gas pedal, and the steering wheel. It's simplistic, but those are the three easiest choices I can think of head on, putting a stop to it, and then just trying to swoosh around. Oh yeah, far more interesting to write about kings duking it out and peasants digging holes. Like, what are they farming? Who are they farming? Alright, and yeah, I suppose I'm running this panel. No one else has said anything. Again, playlist. Yeah, okay. So, yeah. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I guess I will unofficially go to the conclusion. So, if it hasn't already been established, a character singular is different from characters plural. But everything that was discussed at Marefair that focuses on the psychology and philosophy of the character singular can be applied to characters plural. Because when you have a group, of course, groups have internal rules, groups have hierarchies, groups have lines that they don't cross. Or, arguably, they have lines that they do cross. So, stuff like that, it's important to keep in mind. Just because you're part of a group, it does not mean that who you are as an individual gets erased. Likewise, just because you're a bunch of individuals, it doesn't mean that you can't have common causes. Like the bard and the rogue. I better see like a bard pony and a rogue pony just both covered in fucking blood and the rogue just like teasing the bard and the bard just going, I fucking hate you. And yet by the end of it they bang anyway. So, I don't know. It'd be nice to see. A nice little memory of Marefair. Or Marecon. Too many mares. Too many cons. Too many fairs. Not enough fairs, actually. Outside of the character singular versus characters plural, it's worth remembering that social interaction is not required. When it comes to your story, you can have multiple characters. Social interaction isn't required. You do this every day of your life. If you ever go to the store, you're not always going to talk to everyone there. Just, it's not important. Because if you go to the store, you may pick up everything. You may use the self-checkout. You're surrounded by characters. You're surrounded by people who have their very own lives. Does not mean that you're interacting with them. Doesn't mean they're important to you. Doesn't mean they're important to your story. So, that's also something to keep in mind. Just because someone has a name in a story, it doesn't make them important. Likewise, just because they don't have a name that you or your character is not aware of, doesn't mean they aren't important. So, worth keeping in mind. It's not meant to be a riddle or a trick question, just something to keep in mind. You don't have to overthink it. Oil and water. You have to remember that with some characters, they're just not gonna they're not gonna match. Say the bard and the rogue, which I see the question for the D&D. I'll bring that up when I finish. When it comes to the bard and the rogue, you could argue in some ways they're different, but they're probably more alike than say a loyal soldier, a valorous knight, or a paladin, or just a cleric for that matter. Or a monk even, because monks tend to be very lawful. But with them, they're anything but. They're killers and thieves, and just they're more than willing to butcher someone and kill them in a arguably savage way because they're just trying to one-up each other. So, you do need to remember that sometimes not everyone can be friends. Not everyone is even going to want to talk to each other. Just because you have adversarial forces doesn't mean they're going to want to just share a drink and banter like it's a fucking Marvel movie. Some people, it's just, I don't want to fucking talk to you. I want to kill you. I want to kill all your friends. I want to kill all your fucking family. I want to kill everyone associated with you. And then after that, I'm moving on. Because it's either a job, or it's personal, or I just don't fucking like you. Again, British and French. And also the end of it, I put down celebratory dab. So I am demanding that everyone give us a celebratory dab. Autistic screeching is not required, but the dab is. So, yeah, there we go. And you know what? I'm gonna do it, a second time. So, I did twice the dab. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how you feel about it. But fuck it, it's Marecon. We've had fun. To be fair, I took a nap earlier today, so I haven't paid much attention to the other panels. It's not being a dick, just I haven't paid attention. And that is Horsewords, and you keep your friends close. Now, whether or not you keep your friends or your enemies closer, it's up to you. Or, it's not up to you, it's up to your characters. I guess I'm officially done at, what, 2 hours? Was it 2 hours? No, an hour and a half? 2 hours and a half? Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's been a while. Almost as long as the first one. Arguably, it's been more productive. So, uh, yeah, thank you. Last unofficial question, which again, until I get off, I don't think anyone cares what I say. Not writing related, but at this point, D&D's been brought up too much to not ask. What's my favorite class? My favorite class, my personal favorite, is Monk. What I like about monks is that they can be the most unassuming dudes ever, but they are also extremely dangerous if they have a chance to make it to at least third or fourth level. Keep in mind, I'm thinking of third edition slash Pathfinder in mind. Uh, 10 more minutes, so that's fine. Surely I can talk more for 10 minutes. The reason why I like monks the most is because, one, they get a nice wisdom bonus to their AC, not just dexterity. I think that's pretty bitchin', because it means if you're actually a pretty, not a wise guy, a fucking wise guy, not just not a fucking brainiac, but just if you have your head on straight, you can use that to help avoid getting hit. That's kind of cool. The second part that I like is that eventually you punch with such strength that your hardness increases. And trust me, if you know me, you know I am an exceptionally hard man. But I'm also soft on the inside too. Now, you may not know this, but the people in armor, they're soft on the inside too. They'll talk about how hard they are, but they're squishy and soft. A monk, as they level up, will be able to strike with the hardness of, I think, up to adamantium or some shit like that. Which means you can have a motherfucker decked out in the world's most expensive, most fancy armor possible in their reality. And a monk will just look at that and go, oh, call me can opener. And then they just fucking punch your heart out. And it's so cool. I love it. The third thing that I like is eventually they become immune to most poisons. It gets to the point where if you have a high enough level monk, if you allow that motherfucker to live, the only way to take him down will be by force. Because you won't be able to. You can probably trap him, maybe. You can do whatever magic bullshit, maybe. But if you just try to poison him, it's like, no, it's fine. Really? Dude, that was enough to kill like 17 giraffes. Yeah, but check these abs though. And what I really like about monks is that not even necessarily they're like buff. Like you don't need a buff monk. You truly don't. I would argue that strength is maybe the fourth most important stat for a monk because you have dexterity number one, wisdom number two. I would say constitution would be three, and then strength would be four. And you would think that's kind of weird because to anyone who plays any sort of melee game, obviously strength is better. Not much. Because not only do you get that hardness increase, but eventually, which is, I would argue, the monk's most important ability, the ability to strike like multiple times. Like when I was growing up, I had a monk character, like after months and months and months, and grappling away a fucking sword of wishing from a death knight, which was my friend's fault for giving the death knight that to begin with. At getting level 20, I think a monk can attack up to 6 times in one turn. Like something absolutely insane where like the first 3 hits are plus 20 for the base attack bonus. Then it drops down to 18 or 16 and down to 10 at the lowest. So it's like like flurry of blows, that's what it's called. So every turn this dude is just going to attack you, he's going to hit you. He's going to hit you a lot. And depending on the type of armor that you're wearing, if you're wearing any at all, it's not going to do shit. It's like oh no, well, good luck hitting me because, my damage reduction is 10. Oh, well, my fist is I'm considered an outsider now as far as classification goes. This just goes through your shit. My hands are like half spectral. They just punch your fucking soul. And it's just they can't do shit about it. And when it comes to a lot of melee focused classes, they rely on that armor. They rely on their weapons. If you're a monk and if you can grapple anywhere decently, and if you focus on the dexterity side of things, I think you can do like the finesse or proficiency or something like that. You can grab their fucking sword out of their hands, fling it, and just say, "All right, motherfucker, come on, let's go." And then you have a fist fight with a dude who is trained to fuck your shit barehanded versus a dude who is trained to swing a very expensive, very heavy weapon. He may swing it very well, but if he doesn't have the weapon, he's not swinging shit. So I enjoy that, and then like I just it's fun. It makes you very creative in your situations because one, unless you have like some way to easily threaten people, like say you beat someone to a pulp, he runs away. He goes to get his big brother and his cousin or whatever, and they're gonna fucking gank you later after school, whatever. They do this. It's like no one's gonna think you're a threat because you're probably not wearing armor at all. If you're wearing anything at all, so if you want to be a Florida man monk, I'm just saying it's gonna work. You don't have to be wielding anything at all. I mean, you don't even have to have a fucking quarterstaff. You can be wielding like a ladder. You can go full Jackie Chan if you want. So you don't want no trouble. Except you really want trouble. You can do all this shit, and they're just going, dude, it's this fucking dude. All right, well, guess what? If you're high enough level, quivering palm. Quivering palm is basically the five-fingered death poke. Where if they fail against their fortitude, you punch them, and I think for like up to a week, at will, you can just kill the dude. There's no saves. If I quivering palm you and you fail your fortitude save, up until this deadline, which you are not going to know that the deadline even exists. You don't even know that anything happened. As far as you're aware, you just got punched in a funny way. And he kind of rubbed you when he punched you, which is just, it weirds you out, but okay, whatever. You don't know what the fuck happened. But the monk, if you do anything, you just go, bam. And then he's dead. Fucker's dead. Just, oh, that's awesome. I like that. I haven't really had many chances to have him go up against anyone like one on one at the time when I had him, just because Quivering Palm is just like it completely fucking no sells. Not to mention monks have improved evasion, which it's pretty cool because if you have say a fireball going at you, it's gonna deal damage because if you succeed evasion, you still take half percentage, unless you have improved evasion. And I think unless you're flat-footed, you take at least half damage, but if you succeed, you take zero. So I think that's pretty cool too. They're fun classes. The movie is Reservoir Dogs. It is Quentin Tarantino's first movie. Uh, what I really like about it, is that if you ignore the whole thing of it being, it keeps crapping out on me. I don't know why my headset does that. Because if you ignore that Reservoir Dogs is about crime, it's a fucking high school play. It's it's just a fucking high school play because you have many characters talking to each other in a warehouse, in a fucking warehouse, dude. Like, do you know how easy that is? It's I could direct a movie like that. Of course, there's the flashback scenes and like the very small action scenes that are before the present in the movie, but it's just I don't know. I like it. I think as a movie that focuses on characters plural interacting with each other, I would say it's an incredible movie to bring up, um, and to watch. And just when it comes to movies and writing, you have to have writing to have a movie. So there's that. And I'll admit I'm biased when it comes to some movies that I like. Uh, that's just, I'll admit, part of it is the medium. It's very easy to communicate through a movie or through pictures and moving pictures, also known as cartoons, than it is pure text because people are acting it out. You don't have to contemplate what tone is he saying this in other than needing a descriptor because the dude fucking says it in the tone that he does. And you can understand that unless you're autistic. Which we all are, but that's alright. 12 Task of Asterisk. Well, that's weird. I guess if we're doing that too, yeah, it's whatever. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, this has been Horsewords and you. I couldn't have done this without you. The Horsewords do not exist without you. But, once again, you don't matter. That's okay. I don't matter either. What matters are the mares, and what matters is the stories. I know, there is no man. There is no end. The end has no end. So, alright, yeah. Happy Marecon, everyone, I guess. That's it.